Testing. One, two. Testing. One, two. Hopefully, this is going to come out pretty good. Um, I decided I might not have another chance, so I'm going to come on and talk to you about my situation, what happened in the last 30 days. This is very painful for me because I lost a goal. My goal was to do 50 years service for the Air Force for the military. Um, that's over now. That's why this is public and not just friends. That's why I've decided to do this, period. Share it as much as you want. I don't care where. I don't care with who. I don't care why. Um, the three driving factors for me were integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Those are the Air Force core values, in case you didn't know. um, I just started my fourth year working IT, and I've been doing IT for over 30 years. So this was actually my sixth operating system upgrade at deployment, and I'd seen pretty much everything. Um, when I first got to the job working for the training wing at NAS Whiting Field, um, there were basically no parameters, no guidance, no structure. We pretty much did whatever. We didn't even know what permissions we had because there was no way, the way their Active Directory is set up for you to figure that out. Um, so one of the things we discovered was that of the, we ended up figuring out almost, I believe it was exactly 255 kiosk machines all over the base. Now, these aren't kiosk machines like you would see in a mall where you go up and say, okay, find out about our jewelry or whatever. It's not like that at all. Um, these are machines that are used by authorized users. They have to sign in with a common access card or CAC card, which is issued by the military. Um, these are for international students. These are for instructors. These are for contractors. Anybody that's assigned to the base can use these machines. Of those machines, they are used for flight briefing and debriefing, maintenance, records, parts, aircraft checkout, testing, lab for students, and of course, classroom instructor machines, things of that nature. So they are very important. These classes cost a lot of money. They take a lot of time. They take a lot of coordination, and efforts have to be made. Now, those classes start as early as 0530. Those machines are in use from approximately 4:30 in the morning, some of them until 9 o'clock at night. The policy for hours for us folks was no earlier than 6, ended up moving that to 6:30 in the morning, and we were to work 8.5 hour day, taking a half hour for lunch, and be done. No overtime authorized, no change in schedule authorized. Now, the Windows 11 deployment came out. Um, it came out, there was errors in it, it was pulled back, it came out, it was pulled back, it came out, it was pulled back. And because of the way the systems downloaded that, it downloaded pieces and parts of this um, through the network. And network connectivity is not something that is reliable up there, I'll just say. It's extremely insignificant considering you have roughly 1,400 students on that base at any given time. Now, here's two things. The first thing is mission and safety have to come first. Mission and safety. And this is the base mission. This is safety of personnel. Those are the two things that have to come first. And why do I know this? Well, it's very simple. Um, I was the first full-time comm guy underneath the Defense Threat Reduction Agency umbrella when I worked for the United States Air Force's and Europe Force Protection Cell. So the checklist that they used, basically I came up with talking with other former colleagues from the detachment Det 1 USAP CSS, which was responsible for all comm stuff in Europe, basically. Um, so anyway, that's a little bit of the background on this. Um, I loved that job. I really enjoyed it. Now, here's the issue. Um, I wasn't supposed to be coming in early. I came in early anyway. Why? Because of the three things I told you about: service before self, excellence in all we do, and integrity first. I knew a job had to be done. I don't let missions fail, period. That's been my nature from my active duty career in the Air Force, where I retired, all through my time as a contractor. Now, you may say, if you're that dedicated, why didn't you become a GS? Why didn't I become a civilian? Because it's very simple. I enjoy doing things, not talking about things. I sat through so many meetings that were completely useless and unproductive during my active duty career, especially as it got more advanced. I didn't see any reason to sit through those meetings when I could be the one making the difference out with the users. And I enjoy talking to the users. That was my social life. In fact, because my personal life has developed the way it has, probably because of my dedication to uh, the military has been my family, basically. So, anyway, uh, the deployment came out, Windows 11, very, very, very short time frame. And the guidance we were given was that you had about 2 weeks to get this deployment done. If you didn't meet that deadline, what was going to happen was users could still log in, but they couldn't do anything except go straight to the Windows 11 upgrade, which they said took approximately 2 hours. Wrong. It could take up to 12 to 14, depending on all the problems, all the issues, and that's if it was actually successful. Then you had patches and several reboots on top of that. So, first of all, the build was messed up. Second, the timeline was way too short. And thirdly, there's this whole thought process going on with COM now, and it seems to be military wide and maybe completely all over the place, as far as not just military, but the entire world, of all these things are user deployable. In other words, the end user is supposed to be the one doing this. Now, when you have kiosk systems, as I explained, these kiosk systems are not assigned to any one user. No one user is responsible for those kiosk systems, meaning that someone out there has to be responsible to get that upgrade done. You can't just give this to some brand new kid in the service or some maintenance guy who doesn't know anything about computers and say, okay, you need to deploy this system. You need to sit there. So I made the decision that I was going to have to work extra to get this done, to get this accomplished, because we couldn't lose these testing spaces. We couldn't lose these briefing spaces. Definitely couldn't lose these classroom instructor machines because of these problems. So I went ahead and worked the extra hours. Yes, I spent roughly 20 nights, if you want to call it that, either in my office or in my car. I'll explain why. I have a I live 35 miles away from where I was working. I was under a lease, couldn't afford to move, so the drive was what I had, an older car. Because of that, I couldn't possibly work those hours and be there when I needed to be and when I had to be and make that drive back home. It was just completely impossible, and I knew that. So willingly, I gave of my time, my effort, and I'm not one who goes around and blows my horn. I'm not one who brags about stuff. I enjoy being a member of this service. That's why I did it. I love these kids. I love this mission that they're doing, and I got tons of respect for them. Flying is very important to me. The reason is I always wanted to be something involved with flying. I had an accident in basic training. You might see that this tooth is missing and there's some other damage done. That's because of an accident in basic training. And I got knocked out actually, so I never got the chance to fly. So if you don't have a chance to complete your own personal dreams, then what can you do? You can help somebody else complete theirs. Okay? So I was working my normal shift, either going to my car, taking a walk, sometimes even taking a nap in my office, and then going back to work out to all these buildings on both sides of the base, walking all over the place, miles and miles and miles of walking. Lost about 50 pounds in the process over a long period of time, not over just the 2 months, but servicing all these kiosk machines that, like I said before, people didn't even know how many they had or where they were. There was no tracking on that whatsoever. So, and I'm not the only one doing this, but I was the lead in doing it, and we had another admin, great guy. I worked with a great team of people, but they were constrained. Um, I refused to allow my hands to be cuffed, and because I knew if I allowed my hands to be cuffed by the timelines and by the constraints put on me, that the mission was going to fail. I wasn't going to allow that to happen. So I would take a little nap and I would go back out to these kiosk machines when I knew they were not in use. And I would upgrade these machines or service these machines or troubleshoot them so they could get upgraded and so they could continue to be used. I would also take loaner machines out and swap them out. So those machines could be re-imaged if that was necessary. And my colleague was doing the re-imaging. Um, During this time, and I also discovered that not only were people unaware of when these classes took place, when the training actually started, they were unaware even that some of these facilities were open during those hours. So there was a complete lack of involvement with the customer, the end customer. The folks who run these facilities, the folks who run the training programs, running academics, even the contractors. I made a point of going out and getting involved with those people, finding out what their mission needs were, finding out what their schedules were, finding out what their manning was. I mean, doing all the things I needed to do to try to better serve their needs. This was the whole point. So, long story short, I'm going to try to make this as short as I can. This could go on for hours, but um, we managed to get all of those machines upgraded in the ridiculous timeline. And it was because this 64-year-old man at the time was working up to 18 hours a day. That's the truth. Um, One actual 5-day work week, I worked the 70 hours. I recorded that. Did I ask for overtime? No. Did I ask beforehand if I could get my schedule adjusted so I could serve those machines and present the schedules and the information that I found? Yes, I absolutely did. I was flat out denied. Well, again, being denied that says, okay, you don't have permission to do it. But that also meant mission failure and huge expense. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. So got those done. The morning of 7 November, Friday morning, I'd been in there since 5:45. The first thing I always did every morning was I'd go in, check the instructor machines, make sure they were all up and running, go reboot them if I needed to, go put them back on the wired network if I needed to, reboot them, make sure the patches were loaded so the instructors could come in, log in, go straight to teaching. I'm outside in the smoke pit, and a guy comes up to me I'd never met before, asked if I was Dan. I said yes. He said he had a call from Alex DeBell. I mentioned that name in particular because that is the lead for the area, and he said he wants to talk to me. And he says, "Hey, buddy," those were his first words. Then he said, "I need you to turn in your CAC to this guy who handed me the phone. Go home and wait for a call from your company." And I asked him, I said, "So am I being fired for what?" And his response was, "No, you're not being fired, but we have to go through the process." Now, looking back on this, I should have told him, "I'm not giving him a damn thing until you tell me what's going on." Because I was completely blindsided. I had no idea what the issue was, no idea what they were doing. My instinct told me at the time, you turn this CAC card, you're done. You're done. And then this guy asked me if I have an alt token card, which is another admin issue. He asked me if I have a provided machine and all this kind of stuff. So it was obvious that I was going to be fired at that point. Now, I'm completely in shock because the academics guys were happy with me. I had gotten no indication from the team I worked with or anyone else that there was any kind of a problem. Um, so I I went to my car, tried to calm down, drove home, waited for a call. I called my company boss, Dan with SSI, and I basically said, Dan, I was told to come home um, and wait for a call from you. We were going to talk about this. The next thing I hear is like an hour or so later, um, we've received notice from the client outlining several concerns regarding your conduct while on assignment, including incidents of unprofessional behavior toward client personnel, inappropriate use of client property and facilities, and unauthorized access to a coworker's workstation. Those were the three things they told me. Completely blindsided. Said, due to the nature of the reported incidents, the client has elected to end your assignment effective immediately. As a staffing partner, we are required to respect and uphold the client's decision. Now, I have since spoken with the people I worked for and all of that, and no one that I worked with on that team wanted me gone. Nobody there wanted me gone. Um, Now, this guy, before I had an issue with my alt token card, and I was trying to troubleshoot that. Well, the problem was my common access card, it had expired before my alt token card did. Okay. I knew there had to be some sort of tie-in, and I troubleshot this as much as I possibly could. I actually got a call from the same Alex yelling at me for troubleshooting the problem and passing this around. And I was trying to pass it around to keep everyone in the loop, everyone who had any stake in this in the loop. I was passing the information around, troubleshooting, trying to figure out the issue because I couldn't get any answers. I was trying to keep my job, do the best job I could. I got yelled at for it. So turns out I was right on that. Um, anyway, I wrote these guys back and I gave them a long list, explained exactly what was going on. First of all, unauthorized access to somebody's machine. I can only figure that that was made up because they don't have to back it up. Florida's a no fault state. An employer can dismiss a contractor if they don't like your shoes. As long as it's not a discriminatory thing covered under federal law, they can dismiss you at will, basically. Um, we don't like your attitude. We don't like the way you look. We don't like the way you shave today. We don't like the shirt you wore, whatever. Um, I have tried to explain this. I have gotten good feedback from SSI. I have not heard a word back from Leidos. And this is the game they play. This is the game they play. Because you're a subcontractor, okay, they can force your sub to fire you, but they don't have to answer for a thing because they didn't fire you technically, even though it was their decision, okay? So because of financial problems, I am between a rock and a hard place. I have tax issues, so I can't draw Social Security. Because of the nature of my dismissal, I can't claim unemployment because the nature of it and what I read to you says I was at fault for this, even though I explained all of this to these guys and told them what the circumstances were. There was one incident with an older lady who I had been troubleshooting with for about 30 minutes. I went back to my office at the time next door to hers. She came over demanding I come over and service her workstation. I just didn't have the time, and she just would not take no for an answer. So I got a little upset. I didn't yell at her. I didn't do anything inappropriate. And she walked off and said, don't bother. I saw her the next time about 2 weeks later, and I went in and I apologized to her. I said, snapping like that was not me. It was an incredible, stressful situation. I was very tired. And I said, I did all I could. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't normally treat people that way. So I did apologize for that. That's the only incidents I can possibly figure out. And the other thing was because I spent the night. But I've explained why I had to and what the reasons were. There was no compensation package offered. There was no severance offered. There was no even my last, and I will actually read you this email. The last interaction I had from my company, and I'll read you the actual messages I wrote. I wrote to the director of HR. My message was, "You have been so helpful and kind in your responses to me, and I deeply appreciate that. I want to make this clear before I even get into the substance of my email related to the subject line. Subject line was appeals grievance process. Um, I said, it is my understanding that SSI did what they had to do based on the sub relationship with the primary Leidos. So my question is not related to SSI as to my employer, but to Leidos' decision authority in my dismissal. I am also well aware that the government office I worked for did not want to lose me as a member of their team. And I've spoken directly to the individual of charge as well as the two civilians I work directly under, and wanting to retain me has been the constant theme. I assume, however, since SSI was my employer at the time, that in order to initiate a formal appeal grievance against my dismissal, that I need to start with SSI. So if that assumption is incorrect, please advise me of such and direct me to the proper office or individual. It has taken me some time due to the shocking and seemingly very sudden nature of my dismissal to even get my bearings on how I felt about all of this. And to be honest, I'm a bit upset with myself. I never should have been willing to turn over anything to Alex DeBell's local lead without first having had the opportunity to address the alleged reasons for such, and firmly believe there should have been a suspension, either paid or unpaid, while review was taking place. To have turned over my access card without this having taken place, I regard as both disrespectful and unethical, as clearly my focus was on going above and beyond by any means possible to support the mission of the unit where I was assigned. I absolutely realized my methods were unconventional and perhaps did go against established policy. However, the results achieved are irrefutable, and the fact is that without my efforts being exactly what they were, the flight training mission and the installation would have suffered great expense and delays, which, had a thorough and appropriate review taken place, would have been substantiated by academics leadership. I have, for the most part, given up after nearly a month the idea of retaining my position, as I have not received any responses to my repeated requests as to whether there was any action had taken place between SSI and Leidos regarding the overturning of my dismissal, though a thread of hope remains in my heart. However, if there is nothing remaining to be done regarding my being restored to the position, I still absolutely feel it is important to have a formal grievance on file, if nothing else, to prevent future employees being handled in this manner. And I also firmly believe that my substantial extra effort and sacrifices in doing so do deserve financial compensation. I said, I appreciate your time and look forward to hearing back. Here's the response I got. Dan, I understand that it is not easy to be let go from a position that you care so much about. But as I have said before, there is nothing I can do other than, as you are asking, I can keep this email in your file. Employment agreements are at will for both employer and employee, meaning that you can quit or be let go for any reason or no reason at all, as long as it is not based on something discriminatory. We certainly wish you the best moving forward. So that's where this stands. That is what my last month has been about. This is why I have been asking for prayers. This is why I've been praying a lot myself. This is why I've tried to do whatever I could do to make things work. So I appreciate your continued prayers. Thank you so much. And by the way, this firing happened 2 days before my 65th birthday and before Veterans Day. So I didn't even get my Veterans Day paid holiday. It is what it is. Um, If you made it through all this, thank you so much. I wish you the best and God bless.